Hello guys, my name is Daniel Bolgatz. I'm blessed to be the CEO and co-founder of Graffiti Park. I run this company with another buddy of mine also named Daniel, and we have a airbrush class tonight for you guys that we do part of our educational series. Ironically, our special guest tonight is also named Daniel, so you have a trifecta of Daniels out here for you. Daniel, or Handsome Panther as we like to call him, well-decorated artist. You can find his pieces all over Las Vegas. You can find his artwork at Handsome Panther on Instagram, Handsome Panther Designs.
Yes.
And without further ado, we will get into the airbrushing basics.
How's it going, folks? My name is Danny, as he stated, or Daniel, but you can call me Danny. People know me as Handsome Panther. I've been in the Vegas Valley for about 8 years now. Before that, I cut my teeth in Long Beach, California, doing canvas work and just drilling it out like most of you guys do at First Fridays, art festivals, so forth and so forth. And part of what got me interested in airbrushing was the custom culture of Southern California, which is the car culture, the rockabilly culture, the punk culture, stuff like that, and the unique designs that they would use in their vehicles and so forth. So my methods of doing art with my airbrush is finding how to incorporate that with my Latino heritage as well as what is around me. With airbrush, there is a numerous amounts of ways that you can utilize an airbrush. This is our agenda today, and we're going to go step by step to kind of show you the basics of what an airbrush is and how you can utilize it in your work. We're going to go through types and how to get it started, the parts of the airbrush itself, cleaning, and some tips from someone who's been doing it for a while. Okay, so getting started with the different types of airbrushes. There are a vast amounts of airbrushes online that you can choose from, some being non-brand to some being big brand like Iwata. It really, I think, depends on where you want to take your airbrushing and what applications you want to use it for. If you want to use it for makeup or for cake decoration, something simple, non-name brand can work. If you want to go with something that is more versatile because you're going to use it for bigger projects such as murals or large canvases or anything really, painting a car, then you're going to want to look into it a little bit further and see what's going to fit your style. That's the thing, that's the key thing here with airbrushes, is everyone has a different style. There's two basic airbrushes that you can get. That's a single action and a dual action. A single action is pretty much where you press down on it and you pull back. That's, you pull back on it and it's gonna spray air and the paint mixture all at once. The dual action is more for when you wanna have better control of how you're painting. You're gonna be able to press down on it. You're gonna hear the air flow first, and then you're gonna pull back slightly and that's gonna release the paint. So that gives you more control over what you're doing. So again, it's going to depend on the type of applications that you want to use. Other things come into play as well, like stencils, tape, yada, 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 the list goes on. But again, a good place to look is Amazon. Type in airbrush kit, and you'll see there that you can go from no-name brands to different brands that are like $300–400 a piece. Everything has a use, so it just depends on which way you want to go with it. Harbor Freight also has their own line of airbrushes. You can get their airbrush kit for less than $100 and start with that. Just depends on, again, what you want to do with it. It's a good way to start. I broke my first 3 airbrushes, so if you buy one, know that if you like it, it's going to become something that you're going to be invested into. They're not cheap. The ones I use are Iwatas after trying out different ones. And I felt that Iwata was a superior brand simply because it was universal. You were able to find parts easier, and you were able to, the usability of it is a lot easier for me. So that's why I chose the Iwata. Most parts on there are typically the same parts. I know you see different ones that have cups on the top, ones that have nozzles on the bottom. All that is depending, again, on your preference and how you're going to utilize it. Ones with the cups on top are usually for smaller jobs, simply because you're filling up that cup constantly to get as much of that coverage as you want. So it's more for smaller jobs, more detailed jobs. The siphon feed ones, which is the ones I use, you buy an extra bottle like these with a little siphon hose inside. And you'd use these. They make bigger ones, smaller ones, just depends on your preference. But you use these because you're constantly using it, if that makes sense. Oh, yeah, nicer airbrushes are going to give you more control. That's another thing. A lot of the times when you go with a non-brand, you have to read the descriptions because, again, you're going to have to figure out whether you want a single action or a double action. Just really depends on your preference. Yes, figure out the medium that you want to explore, such as canvas, wood, wall. Just really depends on what you're going to do with it, and that's where you're going to choose your paint. Airbrush you can use several different kinds of paint on airbrush, even acrylic, basic acrylic paints. Just depends on how you reduce it. This is the reducer that I choose to use. It is from Createx Colors. It's 4012 reducer. And this, what I do with this is I reduce any type of paint that I find myself using with this reducer. The reason I use this reducer is because it's easy to clean it off afterwards. The only time that you would not be using that type of reducer is if you're painting in enamel paints. Enamel paints are oil-based paints, so you would have to use a paint thinner for that. And again, that's more for applications for like custom helmets or custom cars, stuff like that. It depends if you want to go into that genre of airbrushing. All right, so this is the basic parts of airbrush. I brought mine so you guys can kind of take a look, pass it around. Sorry, it's a little dirty. It's on purpose. We're going to be cleaning that airbrush today so you guys can get a real good look at how to do it, how to make it easy and efficient. Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at is the needle cap. The needle cap is the front cap that's on the front of the airbrush. It's important that you keep that clean, and if your paint is too thick, it's going to completely block that. If you have a block there, you can easily take that off and clean it off. It's not a difficult part to clean. The nozzle cap is going to be right behind the needle cap. That is the most important part of your airbrush, and it's the most important part to keep clean. The reason being, that's where you get most of your technical issues when you're painting. If you get sputtering in your paint, or if you're getting no paint at all, or if you're getting spit back, it's usually something to do with this area right here. And there are always easy fixes to take care of it. Daniel actually has another kind of airbrush, the cap airbrush that I was talking about. And this is what I was talking about. When you have a, yep, this is a single action. So you're going to be able to see both of them today. Single action just means that both the airflow and the paint flow come out at the same time. This right here is a battery pack.
Thank you.
And you can find these for like $40 on Amazon or something like that. But again, depends on what you're going to be using it for. This is the cup that I was telling you about. So this is where the paint would go. Right in here. You would reduce it in here when you go ahead and mix it. And the reason is it just makes it a little bit more efficient to do so. This is your cap for the paint that goes on top. Put it on. I usually use a paper towel, but you simply just push down or back in this case, and you wait till the paint and air mixture mixes and comes out. It's called priming it. So you prime it until you're ready to go, and then go from there. So we went over the lid, the fluid cup, the main lever. Again, this is going to be where the difference is between a single action and a dual action trigger. And the reason is, with the single action, you're only going to be able to do this, move the trigger this way. If you're doing that, then both of them are mixing at the same time. If you have the dual trigger, you're going to be pushing down to get control of your airflow, and then you're going to be pulling back slowly so that you can get control of your paint flow. The stem, or the handle itself, the handle, it's for you to hold on to it, really, nothing else. I tend to have my airbrush open like this all the time without the handle, simply because if I get a clog, all I have to do is take this part off and boom, I can start working on it right away. So I can get my cleaning done, get back to my project as soon as possible. So really, again, preference. The stem is where you're going to be connecting to your hose. That's another investment that you will have to make, that and a compressor. The compressor itself, this is my compressor from California Air Tools. The reason I have a compressor this big, simply because I use it for mural projects. There are compressors that are 3 times smaller than this. The one that we passed around, that one has an internal compressor, so you don't need a compressor at all. It really just depends on what you're gonna apply and how much of a workhorse you need for that moment. Excuse me. With the compressor, there's a couple of settings that you should know. This right here, this red dial, I don't know if you can see it. This red dial right over here is to regulate your air. Through this lens right here, or meter, you would be able to check out what the PSI level of your airflow is going to be. With airbrushing, when you're starting, you want to have a low PSI, simply because it gives you complete control of what you're doing. The more air pressure you have, think about it like an spray can. A high, what is it called?
High pressure.
High pressure, sorry. I'm drawing a blank. A high pressure can and have more pressure. Low pressure can, you're gonna have less pressure. So the less pressure you have, the more control you're gonna have over what you're painting. I usually set mine to start at about 25. So that gives me a nice even flow. This compressor in particular has a cutoff switch in case something goes wrong. So that's right there. It's just a simple switch. Down here under the valves, you're gonna find the moisture release. When you're airbrushing constantly, you build up moisture in one of the cavities of your air compressor. Make sure that you pull. Make sure you pull that. That's why you pull it often. I haven't pulled that in a couple of years. So again, make sure you pull that often, because that'll happen. Down here is the air release for the tank itself. And yeah, when you're done, release the air, let it go, and you're done. Turn it off. What else? Oh, with mine in particular, and with the Iwata brand, they have what's called a quick release nipple. It's this little piece that you can look for additionally. I'm not sure if universal airbrushes have them, but they come in real handy when you have to use a hose. It's just a simple, and you're there. Now I know you can hear the air, but it sounds very faint, doesn't it? The reason it sounds faint is because this one's clogged. So we're gonna clean it in a little bit so you guys can unclog it and see the difference. No, you have to switch it yourself, but there are some that have automatic switches. It just depends on your preference. For me, it would just be this one right here like that. Compressor, regulator, thinner. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and talk about these items here. Thinner, tape, wrench, oils, gloves, and respirator. A lot of people don't use respirators. I am one of those bad people. I believe you should use a respirator simply because you need to take care of your lungs. And you are ionizing paint, so it is easy for it to get into your body. Now, as far as thinner and tape, you can use tape. A lot of you guys know how to use tape an area out. Good thing about doing thick tape is if you have an X-Acto knife, one second. If you have an X-Acto knife and you need to tape off an area, don't want a lot of overspray like you would get with a regular spray can. You would simply tape off the area you want. And let's say I wanted to make this a round edge. Simply trace with your X-Acto knife. And now it's round. When we spray this, we'll come back to this, but when we spray this, you're gonna see that because of this tape, I'm able to have a crisp outer line and a softer edge on the inside. And that's gonna give you kind of a detailed line as to what you're making. Let's say with this, we're making an eye or something. It would help with the side of the eye right over here, if that makes sense. Most airbrush kits come with a couple of things. It's usually a wrench. Make sure you keep that wrench because that wrench is going to be your best friend no matter what. It's the only thing that's going to fit your airbrush to take off the cap. So whatever you do, don't lose these. Excuse me, if you go with Iwata, they have replacement parts for these. Another tool that you are going to have and need are cleaning brushes with bristles on them. This set, you could get it at Harbor Freight for like $3. So it's not a big investment, but it'll help you out in the long run. Reason being, this is gonna help you clean out this cavity here and this cap in here. See, there's another cap in here. And you see there's like dry paint in there now. So if you ever get that and you get a clog, use these to clean it out with 5618 airbrush cleaner. This is what I use. A lot of people use what they want to use. I would never recommend to use alcohol. I would never recommend to use water. The reason is if you leave it wet, it's going to oxidize and you're going to rust out your airbrush. Yes.
Do you use acetone?
Yes, and we're going to get into that. That is going to be your secret weapon, and I'll tell you about that in a second. So again, this cap is the culprit to most of your clogs. Remember, if you have a problem, it's either going to be here or it's going to be the needle. Since we're taking it apart now, we're talking about all these things. We're going to do this. Taking apart your airbrush, first thing you want to do is disconnect from your air hose. You don't want it to spray you just like I did. Second thing is you're going to release this nut back here. This nut is what holds your needle into the airbrush cylinder. Mine is gunked up and stuck, as you can see. It's completely dry and dirty. The second thing you do when you take it apart is you take, again, your wrench and you take the cap off. You clean both those caps. Finally, you have the body. This is the interior that you would only need to focus on cleaning out this area here. On the siphon feed ones. On the ones with the cap, same thing, just where the paint flows through. That's the only place you need to worry about cleaning. There is a kit that you can buy along with your airbrush. It's a cleaning kit that comes with everything that I've shown you right now. It's like 20 bucks and it's completely worth it. I suggest if you do go into airbrush and you purchase the kit, it'll make your life a lot easier. Comes with this tool as well. This little tool is to take that inside cap off in case it's stuck. And you use this to unclog the inner cap.
Dental floss kind of thing.
That actually comes in your kit. So let's say that I'm in the middle of a job and mixing some paint to go ahead and get started. And so I got my bottle, I got my paint, and the paint that I normally use, and I use it for all my paintings, which is my own little personal trade secret. It's better than acrylic, to be honest with you. It's more brilliant and it actually lasts longer because it's made for cars. Airbrush paint for vehicles, automotive airbrush paint. So when you mix it, what you're going to want to try and do is mix 2 to 1. 2 parts paint, 1 part thinner, or reducer, sorry. So I have about that 1/4's worth of paint in there. All right. Gonna reduce it, and then you shake it. You hear that little beep, just like a spray can. Same thing. That little bead keeps the paint mixing itself. You got all the parts. So now that I've gone ahead and mixed my paint, and I'm ready to get back to work, go ahead and pop it on. The first thing I do on a paper towel usually, or some kind of a surface that I can throw away, is I prime it by spraying it on there to make sure I get a paint flow first. As you can see, the air is coming out, but there's no paint. So what happens when that occurs is, again, the culprit's right in here. So what we're gonna do is take it apart real quick. You see, first thing wrong, the needle's completely dirty. Quickest and easiest way to clean it, get your cleaner. Drop a little on the needle and the paper towel.
That'll come off right away, even if it's like super gunky and dried.
Most of the time, yes. If you get to a point where you get stuck and it won't come off, women's nail polish remover is your best friend. This is your secret weapon. Simply do the same thing. Add a little to your paper towel. Just run it across. And the reason you're only running it across is because you don't want to bend the tip of your needle. If you bend the tip of your needle, you have to get a replacement. Either that or there is a machine that you can use to sharpen it again, but best idea is just to go ahead and not bend the needle.
Thread the needle. Sharp.
So now that that's off of your needle, one part that we didn't talk about too much is trigger placement. With the Iwata, it's easy to put back your trigger. And the only reason is, if you look at the back of it, there's a little divot in the back right here, and I'll pass it around so you can see it. That little divot allows you to remember that that goes towards the back and the regular part goes to the front. So you'll be able to get that needle back in, no problem. Right there. And the bottom of the trigger itself, do you see it? Mm-hmm. How it's like a little divot that goes inside? Yeah. That's to let you know that that goes back towards the back of the airbrush. Oh, she's worried because the trigger came out. See? Now when you clean your airbrush, you do need to take this part out. And the reason you need to take it out is because you need to make sure that it does not have any debris. And right in here, which is the piston that goes through the airbrush connector, that has to get lubricated. Iwata does have their own oil for it, but I'm sure any kind of machine oil will work. And we're gonna do it, let's try it again. See if we get a spray.
Success.
Now it's very light and broken, as you can see, very faded. And the reason is because the cup in here is still dirty. So since we haven't been able to really clean it, until you clean it, you'll be able to get a nice crisp shoot. Just depends, again, how much pressure you got in your your airbrush, in your compressor. Even if it's a little dirty, now you see, spraying a little bit better. So what we're gonna do now is come over here, and remember you wanted that crisp line. Less overspray, nice crisp line. One of the easiest methods to do with an airbrush. Just really depends again on what you want to go ahead and focus on when you use it. When you first pick up an airbrush and you live for a while, you remember that when you try to get someone to teach you this, there was only one thing that they would make you do. They wouldn't teach you how to take it apart. They figured you need to learn that on your own. But the one class that I guess you could say they would give you at the time was doing 3 things. And that was practicing lines and trying to get it as thin as possible. So lines. Second one is dagger strokes, which is going thick to a point. So dagger stroke, dagger stroke, dagger stroke, dagger stroke. So you would literally set up a piece of paper about this big, and you practice it all the way around, and then you cover it up, or you get another paper, and you do the same thing. Those are the basics that you will get. The reason you need to learn those basics, oh, the third one, circles. Controlling your circles. Controlling your circles lets you control how much you're sprayed. So this is a very important one. Controlling your circles, going from big to small, lets you get into detail. I'm talking about detail. It just depends on how much effort you put into it. It's all about finger control and practicing your lines and your dagger strokes. So when you practice this, again, you're gonna go all the way over. Then the same thing with the dagger strokes. Come back around. And then the last thing is lines. Those are the only 3 things you need to practice to get control of an airbrush. And I guarantee that if you do that for at least 3 months, consistently, 2-3 times a week, you'll be able to get that muscle memory you need to make sure that you can do this. So again, it's all gonna be based on what applications you wanna use it for, whether it be something more detailed, something like a card design, something like an outline or a background or whatever. It just really depends on what you want to achieve with it. That's how you're going to be able to choose your airbrush and what where you want to be with it. Everyday cleaning. I suggest every time you use your airbrush, you clean it. The reason is, as you can see, it can get pretty bad. Changing colors. I didn't bring any other additional colors, but another reason I bought the siphon feed as opposed to the cup feed was because I could already have pre-mixed colors in a bottle ready to go, and all I have to do is clean out the needle. The easy way to clean out the needle, one of Danny's tricks, is filling up an empty bottle with cleaner. And every time you're going to change a color or you're done, you run cleaner through your airbrush. That's how much paint is still in there. So you just do that until it clears out. Take out the needle, clean it, you're good to go. Takes seconds to do that. We talked about the viscosity and the measurements as far as diluting your paint. Make sure, again, you can use any real type of paint to airbrush, anything from watercolor, liquid watercolor to enamel paint. Just depends on what you're trying to do, and it'll give you the opportunity to work with it. Working with watercolor, the best thing about that is that you don't have to dilute it. That's the only thing that you don't have to dilute. It's already water-based, so it's going to run smoothly through your airbrush, and it's going to be easy to clean. So it's a good way to start. Yeah.
Have you heard of golden color high flows?
Yes.
So suppose, I don't know personally, I use them in my paint markers. I don't have to dilute them. They said it's the same with airbrush. You can just throw it in the airbrush and it'll work the same.
There are paints that you don't have to dilute. I suggest testing it first. Some will make the claim that you don't have to dilute them, but based on the characteristics of your airbrush, you might have to.
Okay.
Just really depends on what you're working with. There are some paints that I have that I don't dilute, you know, but for what are they called? The Montana acrylics, the water-based acrylics, the refill bottles.
Yeah.
I use those all the time, and I don't dilute it.
Yeah, because the high flow, I put it in my markers, and I feel like it's a lot better than the Montana brand, and it's a lot cheaper.
I totally get it, and that's another reason why I went with this type of paint. If you check out the price of this type of paint or paint sets versus the regular colors you would get in acrylic paint, you'll find that it's a lot more affordable. And you get a little bit more punch off of this paint, in my opinion. Any other questions?
How does one of these ones work? How do you change out colors on one of those?
So with these, the easiest way to change out the color is you're going to get the color to come off the top. You can either dump most of it, spray out the rest, or you can spray it out completely, however, depending on you want. What I would do traditionally with one of these is after I dump out the paint, I would put the airbrush cleaner all the way to the top, leave the cap off, and I would run it, again, spraying a piece of paper or something that I could throw away, just to make sure it gets most of that debris out. Then what I would do after that is I would take off the back so I could get to the needle. Undo the nut, pull it out and clean it. Then once you've gone ahead and cleaned it and ran your cleaner through it, you should be ready to go. Most clogs, to be quite honest with you, most clogs and most like technical issues that you'll have with an airbrush are due to not diluting your paint right, not getting the right mixture. Some people even go as far as straining their paint to make sure that none of the debris gets stuck on the flow. So that's where you get most of the issues with an airbrush. Other than that, they're the most reliable painting utensil I've used.
So these ones are just an Amazon brand. They're very, very cheap. I've seen these. We've used these at projects where you can literally use Montana spray paint. You spray a little bit of that, you mix it with a little bit of acetone, and they run through the nozzles wonderfully. These ones are, you can find them on Amazon. They're literally $50. They're very intro level. They've got their own compressor on them and a battery underneath. So if you're looking for, the most dulled down version, that's as simple as you can get, and you can get really crazy and
How long does the battery last on that one?
because it's quick and efficient for me. I tend to, if I don't have the ability to use spray paint, because I use a lot of spray paint on my backgrounds, I'll do airbrush. It's just a little bit less as overbearing as the spray paint. So I tend to do that, and I tend to do a lot of shadowing, shading, giving stuff texture. Just really depends on what I'm working on or what I'm trying to build. Say I was trying to do a rock, well then I would work on texture and coloring. You know, it just really depends what you do. Yeah. But yeah, I've used it for portrait work. I've used it for custom car design, like I was explaining earlier. It just, the world is open to so many different applications, like I can't even tell you. It just depends on how interested you are on the airbrush itself, because that'll give you an opportunity to say, hey, do I want to continue looking into what else I can use this on? You know, an airbrush will let you paint figurines. Like there's just people that use the single action to paint figurines. That's their hobby, their passion. You know, so again, it depends on what you're trying to achieve. Yes?
Will you try using the compressor with a small generator, or is that too chaotic?
I've used a generator. I've had to because I didn't have electricity where I was painting.
Yeah.
So it's not chaotic. Depending on the compressor you get, and chances are to start you're gonna want to get a small one, more portable one. Reason being because you don't know how many places or what you're gonna use it for.
Yeah.
Whereas something like this, it's a little bit more overbearing, as you can see.
Yeah.
It's a little overwhelming. This setup here is, I think, the compressor was 200. My airbrush at the time was 150, and I bought 2 of them. So this, not including paint and tools that I use, like $500. So it just, again, depends on your level of commitment to it.
Yeah. I got, for Christmas, I was given a little Grex kit, I think, so the compressor is kind of like that small.
It sounds really light when you turn it on, like yeah. Yeah, that's one of the compressors I started with.
Yeah, when I saw that one, I was like, oh, that's
Yeah,
serious.
no, and I was telling Omacade Arts that I started with that compressor thinking that I could do any job, and I was doing murals with it, but it was so difficult because they would overheat.
Oh, I see.
So I would literally take my belt off and wrap it around my side, and I would tie it to the handle of the compressor so I could have it with me while airbrushing it. And so I'm airbrushing, and literally after I'm done, you could see my clothes have burn marks
Oh my God.
because you're overworking your compressor.
Yeah.
It's good for smaller things, you know, but if you're going to take on a wall, I suggest you go with something a little bit more versatile. So, again, depends on how much you love it. Any other questions?
Well, that's awesome. Thank you guys for tuning in. The benefit of being here is that now we get to test out and try all this stuff out. So thank you, Danny. Thank you guys for tuning in. We're on to the next one.
Yeah.
So those video endings